Welcome to the Inside Scoop Live podcast, where indie authors get personal about their books, their writing, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt. Join me for some lively conversations with debut indie authors and seasoned veterans alike. It's a great place to find your next amazing read or even get inspired. So sit back and enjoy the show and let me know what you think. Hi everyone, my guest today is Kristin Bloch, author of Scatter Seeds of Kindness, a book of poems and short stories about life, love, and the things that shape our souls. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on Kristin. Kristin Bloch first began rhyming words together at a very young age. Soon these words expanded into poems and stories that enchanted family and friends. A compilation of those writings was recently released in her first book, Walk Through a Field of Flowers. Kristin works full-time and has earned an MBA degree from the University of Phoenix. She is also a certified personal trainer and certified Pilates instructor, teaching several classes each week. Scatter Seeds of Kindness is her second book. You can learn more about Kristin Bloch and her work by visiting her website at kablochauthor.com. Well, hi, Kristin. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Sherry, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Actually, when I saw the title, before I even saw the cover, I actually got a great big smile on my face because it sounded so refreshing as opposed to, all the negativity we're exposed to, it seems like, on a daily basis these days. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your book? What is Scatter Seeds of Kindness all about? And what was your inspiration for writing it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I didn't set out to write a book specifically about kindness. I have always written poetry from the time I was very young. I mean, we're talking like 5, 6 years old. That's kind of how I found my voice because I came from a family, love them dearly, but they like to talk over me quite a bit. And being the youngest child, I would often be like interrupted, like telling a story at the dinner table. And, it would just kind of get pushed to the side because somebody else would have something more important to say. So I learned very young that if I started talking, I would get interrupted. But if I wrote something down and I said, hey, family, I have something to read to you, I had their attention. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, I kind of started to learn that I had this ability to rhyme words together and to create stories that rhymed. And, I started writing more and more poems about little, innocent things when you're a kid. And then as I got more life experience and things started happening in the world and in my life, I started to get a little bit more personal with them and really kind of found my voice through that. So I had taken a long hiatus from writing in my 20s, early 30s, just busy with other things and kind of forgotten about writing for a long time. And I had everything in a binder that I came across during the lockdown of 2020 when everybody was kind of looking for home projects to do. And I was cleaning out a drawer and I found this binder of poems and I said, hey, some of these are pretty decent. Maybe I should do something with them. I mean, God forbid if something were to happen to me and I would leave the world and nobody would know that I had done anything like this. And I started exploring and I actually put those out in my first book that I published back in 2020 called Walk Through a Field of Flowers. And that was just named after a journal from one of my creative writing classes. And what I did with that book was I started to include a little introduction about each poem and a little story behind it, maybe the inspiration, why did I write it, what were my thoughts behind it, that kind of thing. And I got a lot of really good feedback from people that really enjoyed kind of reading the author's thoughts on things.
Yeah.
Because, right, a lot of times with poetry, we don't quite know where is it coming from, what are they thinking, sometimes we don't know what it's about, right, in some cases. So I got a lot of feedback from people, and I didn't have any plans of doing another book, but as sometimes the creative juices start flowing and I started to gather material for this latest book. And I followed that same format of including my thoughts and my inspiration or motivation, behind each poem. And I started to notice just a theme of kindness that kept emerging. And quite a few of the poems had some kind of a kindness theme built in there somewhere. And so there was the title and so that the book was born.
Wow. So I love that because I'm not a poetry reader. I mean, that's not my go-to.
Right.
I will read it, but I don't seek it out. And part of the reason is, and I'm guessing many people have this problem, is because I don't feel like I know how to read it and it's a bit intimidating. And so
Yes.
I feel like with your explanations or stories before or after the poetry, that kind of helps people that, well, especially that are new to poetry, to understand and, maybe just compare what they were thinking with what you wrote. And it just kind of gives you a bit of freedom that way, I think.
Yeah, and I love that. And I don't want to take away anybody's thought process when they're reading the poetry. I want everybody to kind of interpret it their own way. So I'm not trying to say,
Hmm.
you can't think this way about it. But, it does maybe give somebody food for thought if maybe they were thinking it was going in a different direction. And then they read my explanation and they're like, oh, okay, this is where it was, going for. And I kind of got this idea years ago. I was watching a DVD of a band that I really like. They were doing like an intimate concert at like a concert hall. And before they did each song, the lead singer got up there and he talked about the inspiration behind each song or what the song meant.
Oh,
And 9 times out of 10, it was different than what I even imagined that it was.
yeah.
I really enjoyed I was like, oh, that's what that song is about, or that's what that line means in that song. And so I think maybe that was kind of in the back of my mind when I started to do this. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback from it. So people do enjoy it. But again, I still want them to kind of apply it to their own lives or their own interpretation of it, but gives them a little bit of something to kind of know where my mind was when I was writing it.
Right, right. Yeah. No, I love that. I feel like that it almost sets Scatter Seeds of Kindness apart to me. Because I don't
Yeah,
see it. I don't see that happening a lot. Yeah.
right. And I've never seen any other poetry book out there where they kind of do that. So hopefully it's a little bit of a unique poetry book. And so far people have really enjoyed it. So I'm
Yeah.
going to keep doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I love what you said earlier about you learning to write to get your family's attention. That's pretty perceptive. I'm not sure exactly how old you were, but that was that's pretty perceptive. Why did you choose poetry instead of prose, or was it even a conscious thought at that time?
It wasn't even a conscious thought. And I'll say that the poetry chose me
Mm.
because I just would sit down and things would just rhyme. And not all poetry does rhyme, and not, all poets rhyme their words. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's just my particular style. And at a very young age, I would just, even something like as simple as like Mary Had a Little Lamb, like those innocent type of poems or stories that I would come up with, but they always rhymed.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't know how to not rhyme a story together. So I did dabble a little bit in the prose, like short stories, and it just didn't resonate with me as much. I didn't get, super excited about it. But then, when you're searching for a word to, to find that perfect rhyme that goes, with the line before it or 2 lines before it, and then you find it, there's such a satisfaction in that. And I just didn't get that same thrill from writing the prose, although I have been enjoying writing the prose that goes along with each of the poems.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see it at different points in the book. Sometimes it's very short, maybe just 2 paragraphs, and then other times it goes on a little bit longer. And it just kind of is how I'm feeling at the moment, how what is flowing in my mind, what else do I want to say about it. So, but I am actually finding an enjoyment in doing that kind of prose. I don't know if I'll ever venture out into like a fiction genre. I'm so in awe of people that write fiction, and especially like some of the more complicated, like I listened to your podcast the other day with the science fiction author. I'm just like, I can't even imagine, that process that they must go through.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying kind of venturing off into a little bit of the prose with these poems, but the rhyming part of it it's still my first, go-to.
Yeah. I don't know if it's easier because I think like you said, it's hard to find exactly the right word. But to me, that makes more sense as a beginning poetry reader, because like free form poetry, I don't get that at all. I don't know how to read it. I don't know how to interpret it.
Right.
So if it rhymes and it's, yeah, I can make sense of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, and there's that satisfaction of just nailing down that perfect line. Like, you're searching and searching for a rhyme, and then all of a sudden, and I comment in the book, a lot of times, I just have to kind of put it on marinate and just let things marinate in my head for a while. And then, I'll get in the shower. I had tell this little story about, I'll get in the shower and I'll put the conditioner in my hair, and then boom, there it is, that perfect rhyme. And, I have to tell myself, like, just keep going through your mind until you're done with your shower and can get out and write it down, because if I don't write it down very quickly, it's going to be gone. So, but it's that like, oh, you have to hit me right now. This is an inopportune time to find this perfect rhyme, but there it is. I always say the words are boss, they find me. So
I think the shower is the place where inspiration hits most.
Isn't that so funny? I don't know why that is. I think maybe we just, can just relax and let the water flow, and maybe that gets the thought process flowing. I don't know, but I'll take it.
Exactly. So would you say there is an ideal reader for your book? Who do you think would be your target audience?
You know what? Actually, that's an interesting question. With my first book, I do think it was maybe targeted more for, I don't want to say women because I don't want to leave men out, but there was more softer, like more romantic type poems with that book. With this particular book, I really think it's universal. I've heard from men, I've heard from women, older, younger, teenagers, young adults. I've heard from everybody that finds something in here that they can relate to. So there's, just a wide range of poems in here. There's one called The Bully, which talks about an experience, a very personal experience that I had in high school of just being picked on. And how that story kind of turned around into, had a little bit of an interesting ending. And I know somebody that shared that with a young girl in high school that was being picked on. And, she found some comfort with that.
Oh, wow.
And then I have one, about just time, the passage of time and how fast it goes. And one about memories and how they can haunt us, but they can also shape us. Memories can make us into the person that we are today. If we don't have our memories, that's what kind of helps us grow. So that's actually the first poem in the book called The Weight of Memories. And it talks about how memories can be heavy and they can be a burden, but they also build our character, right? They're like building blocks and they grow on each other and they strengthen us.
Yeah.
And ultimately, any memory that we have, we can let it go. We don't have to hold on to it. But if we hold on to it, it does shape us hopefully into a better person. So that kind of has universal appeal. I couldn't say that has to do, like a man or a woman so I feel like the poems in this book are very universal. There's another one called The Devil on My Shoulder, which talks about, we all have that angel and that devil on our shoulder. And, we want to listen to one or the other. And usually we want to listen to that devil, right? That's saying, do it. But then the angel is saying, are you sure you want to do that? And who hasn't had that struggle with themselves?
Right.
And who hasn't given into that devil when they maybe know better? So I think, again, I think that there's a universal appeal with this book. I think anybody could relate to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it. Now, how many poems are in this collection?
Approximately 27, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And I actually have the title of the book, Scattered Seeds of Kindness. I actually have a poem that kicks off the book called that. It's the title poem. And I broke that out into two sections. So the very first part of the book has that poem, and then it carries on into the very ending of the book as well, with the last 4 verses of that one. But it's probably about 27.
Oh, wow. I have to tell you, when we found the reviewer for your book, because we always like to match up the books with the perfect reader that we have, and I sent her one choice, and it was this dystopian some kind of thing, and she's like, I'm going to have to pass on that one because it's just, I've been reading so much of that lately that it's just, I can't do it right now. So I said, well, okay, how about this one? And and I sent her your book and she's like, oh, yes, please,
Oh, that's so great. And she gave me such an amazing review. I was just thrilled to death when I read her review. And she even put in there about, in this day and age when we're just hearing so much gloom and doom. And, now with all the stuff going on in Ukraine and just COVID, and we're just constantly hit with this stuff. And it's maybe a little bit of a break for everybody to pick up a book. And it's not all sunshine and roses in my book. There are some heavy stuff in there as well. But
right.
Maybe a little bit of a break and hopefully a little bit of a reminder to maybe be a little kind to each other through these hard times that we're all dealing with it, right? So maybe pull out that kindness whenever you can is maybe just a reminder throughout the book.
Mm-hmm. So your first book included the poems you found from your childhood. Is that what you said?
Yeah, probably 95% of them were from my childhood. I did include a few newer ones in that book just because I just got hit with a little bit of inspiration. I actually had thought I was done writing. I hadn't written in a very long time. And I thought, it's whatever talent I had or whatever gift I had when I was younger is gone. It's moved on. It doesn't exist anymore. I saw a quote that I thought was so great. And it said, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, the water doesn't flow if the faucet is turned off. So, turn on your mind as the faucet and let the words flow. And I started to kind of do that and realized, hey, this talent, this gift, whatever you want to call it, does still exist. And so I was able to write a few new poems. I wrote one in the first book called "Them in the Middle." And the inspiration behind that was COVID, the 20 lockdown. And it really, that one was more directed at women who suddenly found themselves, working from home, with kids at home and doing homeschooling. And many of them also had parents that were aging and maybe they couldn't go visit them because they were in the nursing home. And, just these women that are finding themselves, and it was men too, but mainly women, in the midst of suddenly in this new world, in the middle of these kids that are now home and, they're trying to conduct a business meeting online because they're working from home now. And the child is like pulling at their, saying, "Mommy, I need lunch," or, you hear your kid is sick, and you're like, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" And so all of the burdens. And so that was an inspiration for that. And then I did another one just about the kind of the unrest that happened in our country around May, June of 2020 and all the chaos and stuff around that. So I knew that I still did have, a few new things to write left inside of me. So those made it into the first book. And then took a little bit of a break again. And then like last year started writing again, and that became Scattered Seeds of Kindness.
Okay. So it sounds like you've pulled from many stages of your life. I was wondering if there was one stage that kind of influenced your writing more than another, but sounds like it's pretty well rounded. Or would you say there is one stage that kind of dominates?
No, not necessarily dominates. I may have more. Well, actually, I was going to say, I know that I wrote about like when my father's death, and not necessarily his death, but he had a man cave years ago before the term man cave was a thing. He would go out into his garage, and that's where like he would spend hours tinkering around. We don't know what he was working on, but he was always out in his garage. And when he passed away, I do remember standing out there, a day or week later and kind of looking around at all the things that were left unfinished and how that impacted me. And that became a poem called His Garage, which was, a tribute to his little man cave. And then in the new book that I'm writing, there's another kind of tribute where I start off talking about like the night he passed away and all the chaos and everything like that. So I think that might be a theme that creeps in maybe a little bit more than others. I'm not a romantic writer, so I don't write the lovey-dovey, fluffy stuff as much as I would love to. It just doesn't come to me. I guess I just don't have a lot of romantic bones in my body, but I have very wonderful and loving relationships and friendships. So I'm not sure why that genre doesn't really strike a chord with me yet. I don't know if that's something that'll change in the future, but so I don't really write lovey-dovey type stuff. I write more, I think, stuff that people can really relate to and on all different levels.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I'm sure that there are people that want fluff all the time, but I think sometimes people are looking for that, some substance to grab onto and, run with it or, just to.
Yeah, sometimes it's just even like one line of a poem that will stick with somebody. And they'll say like, "I love what you said here." I have a friend of mine that texted me one time and she says, "I'm making sticky notes of different lines of your poems throughout your book and putting them all around my house." And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how amazing is that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's just, I'm hoping that even just one line or one word or one verse or one poem will really touch somebody and make an impact on their lives. That's all I can hope for, really.
So your book has been out for right around 6 months now?
Yeah, it came out right around, it was published end of October of last year. I kept it a little bit of a secret because nobody knew that I was writing. With the first book, that one came completely out of left field. Nobody had any idea that I was writing it. And the look on their faces when I gave it to people was just priceless. I kind of seeing that we're approaching the holidays again. I kind of wanted to capture that same feeling and that same surprise. So I kind of held it a little bit of a secret until about mid-November. And then I had given it to a couple of my sister and a family friend and my niece. And I said, here's an early Christmas gift for you. And then once the cat was out of the bag, then I did announce it on social media. So it was maybe more like right before Thanksgiving was when it really was kind of announced out there.
Okay. So what kind of feedback have you received from readers about Scatter Seeds of Kindness?
I had a friend of mine who has another friend who's an accountant, and he called me one night and he says, I'm going to patch you through to my friend, the accountant. And the accountant gets on the phone and he's like, I'm a 64-year-old man. And he says, I don't read a lot of poetry. He's like, as a matter of fact, I don't read any poetry. He's like, but I love your book. And he started talking about different poems that, struck him. He has a daughter who's got some health issues, and he feels like, unfortunately, he's probably going to outlive her. And so the poem about time being a stealer really resonated with him. And that's just a book about how time passes by so fast and it steals things from us, including, our families, our loved ones and stuff. And that had really resonated with him. So that was surprising because you don't expect to hear from a mid-60s man saying, I love your book.
Right.
And, and I know my friend said he still talks about different poems in there that he really liked.
What a wonderful story. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, just a friend of mine who she says the same thing. She says, Kristin, she says, I don't read poetry. I don't understand poetry, but I love your poetry. So hearing stuff like that is just, it's unbelievable to hear stuff like that. So it makes me very happy.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was wondering if you might read us a couple of poems.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them are a little bit longer. So I kind of picked out, I've mentioned a couple of times the one about time being the stealer. So I thought I might read that one.
Okay.
So in the prose that I write before each poem, I did talk about a little bit about how time goes so quickly, and then how time is often referred to as a healer, or some kind of like a deity, as if time provides all the answers. So we're always told if we're making a decision, it's give it time, take the time. And so there is value in time, right? I mean, thankfully, we all have time. We have time to spend with our loved ones. We have time to live our lives. It's a very precious thing. It does go so fast, though. And ultimately, it does steal things from us. I mean, time takes away, I wrote in here about, it takes away our looks. It takes away our health in some cases, our eyesight, our memories. But if we didn't have time, we wouldn't have time to spend with all of our loved ones and stuff. So I get into a little bit about that in the prose. And this one was a personal one for me because it starts off talking about the perspective of my mom when my dad died very suddenly. He had a heart attack one night and was just gone. And how I often heard her just say, he was gone too soon. There wasn't enough time to do everything we wanted to do. And later on in the poem, as we fast forward, as we often do in life, right? We fast forward so quickly. Suddenly it's 30 years later. And now my mom is passing away. And I'm the one saying, there wasn't time.
Yeah.
There wasn't do everything that I wanted to do with her, traveling and stuff like that. So it kind of takes a little bit of a turn here. But so this one is pretty personal.
Okay.
So if you like, I'll go ahead and read it. This is called Time, the Great Stealer. When my father passed away one night, my mother cried and cried about all the things they never did or saw before he died. There wasn't time to do it all. I'd often hear her fret. He's gone too soon. I need more time. It can't be over yet. Tick tock, we are obsessed with those numbers on the dial. The calendar, we flip from month to month in some denial. We deny how fast it's slipping by as snow melts into rain. We cut the grass, kids trick or treat. It's snowing once again. Fast forward 30 years or so, the kids are grown and gone. My mother's life is near its end. It doesn't seem that long since she cooked for us and cared for us and sent us off to school. Damn time, it rears its head again. It really is quite cruel. Fast forward just a few more months, a rainy, dreary day. I laid in bed and held her hand as she slowly slipped away. I saw the nurse checking her watch to call the time of death. Damn time, you stole from me again, I said under my breath. Perhaps I need a change of heart, for time can be a healer. But as I watch the years slip right on by, it just seems like a stealer. I know I should be grateful for all the time we get, but still, I think it's gone too fast. It can't be over yet.
That gave me goosebumps. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I got a little choked up on my voice when I was reading that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I liked on that one. I know it sounds so funny saying I liked because it's like my work, but I like the feeling of the passage of time with like the tick-tocking of the clock and the flipping of the calendar. And, it does kind of show us how, 30 years, boom, it's suddenly gone. And like, where did all the time go, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wow. And I think it kind of makes me think of, my mother. I have an older mother, and then I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, so I've like both ends of the spectrum. And it's like, oh, these years, they go by so fast, it's just, yeah. Oh,
yeah, I know it's crazy. But then, the flip side of that, like I mentioned, is, we have to be grateful for the time that we have, because you have time with that grandchild and you have time with your mother. And, so it's such a precious thing, but it really does go by really way too quickly.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you have another one?
I do. So I was torn between two of them, but I think I'm going to go ahead and go with the reviewer really commented on the poem called Cowboy Boots and Blue Jeans.
Oh, yeah. I remember her mentioning that one. Yeah.
She said her exact line is, she said, had me looking at the differences between a Porsche and a pickup truck in a whole new light. So this one was actually inspired by my young niece who's in her early 20s and just recently moved to Nashville and has just blossomed as a country girl. Oh. And so I kind of took a little bit of my inspiration from her. So this is a fun one. So I thought after that heavy one that I just did, I might do a little bit more of a fun one here. So This one is called Cowboy Boots and Blue Jeans. I love a man dressed in a suit. He always looks so fine. I won't say no to surf and turf. That surely sounds divine. But you can keep your fancy suit and your fancy wheels. I don't need Armani to give me all the feels. You can show up in a Porsche, but I prefer a Jeep or a rugged, muddy pickup truck if you want my heart to keep. You can don your skinny jeans. I guess that is a start. But cowboy boots and blue jeans are the ways to win my heart. If you show up on a Harley, you'll really make me swoon. Throw on a faded flannel shirt, and I just might hit the moon. Put on some Metallica, and my heart belongs to you, especially in those cowboy boots and those jeans of blue. The fancy things, they don't impress, so don't even waste my time. I'm happy with an ice cold beer, but I do enjoy my wine. I'm really just a simple girl. I don't require much. For me, I find more value in your words and in your touch. So treat me right and with respect, and I'll be good to you. But it wouldn't hurt to throw on those boots and those jeans of blue. That was just a more fun one. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people have asked me if my poems are autobiographical. And most of the time, no, they're not. So I pull inspiration and I try to put myself into like the perspective of other people. So this one, there are some pieces of me in this poem. Like I do like a Jeep, and I do actually like a gentleman in cowboy boots and blue jeans. So, but this one's not necessarily autobiographical. This was one I just was having fun with. And I write some heavy stuff sometimes, so it's fun to cut loose a little bit and have a little fun with the words.
Absolutely. So. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. So what's next for you? Do you have another book in mind?
I do. Actually, I'm working on one right now along the same lines of doing the, writing up the prose or the inspiration, motivation, and then with the poem that follows. So I'm taking my time with this one a little bit more than I did with the first two. Like I said, the first two kind of landed around the holidays. So I really was pushing to make sure that they were out by Christmas so I could give them out as gifts. Mm-hmm. And with this next one, I'm not trying to hit that Christmas deadline, and I'm not really keeping it a secret that I'm working on this one. So my answer is kind of like, it'll be out when it's out. Mm-hmm. I'm just taking my time, letting the words kind of flow, and I'm pretty busy these days too. So I'm, trying to market this book and still work on the other one. So I don't have as much time lately to write as I would like. So this one may not hit until maybe even early next year. But that's fine. So I'm just, like I said, enjoying the writing process and just writing when I can and letting the words flow. I always say the words are the boss. So they, if inspiration hits me and I make sure I have pen and paper nearby, I'll jot it down and hopefully it'll make its way into the book. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Working on that right now.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the benefits of self-publishing is that it's ready when you're ready. And
learning a lot through that process.
yeah.
But, along with self-publishing, we're kind of on a little bit of an island here by ourselves, and we have to do all the marketing and everything like that. So, that's taking a lot of time to, figure all that out. So again, I, don't have as much time as I would love to work on this new book, but that's okay, because it'll be born when it's born.
Yeah.
Hopefully early next year, it'll make its way into the world. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, good. And I feel like with each book, and like this will be your third book. So you're growing your audience. So maybe it gets a little easier as, with each book.
Yeah, I'm hoping, because now I have, I'm out on social media. I have a website, which is at KABlochAuthor.com, and I have my social media pages and stuff. So I'm starting to gather a little bit of a following, which is good. And that's nice.
Yeah.
So hopefully, when the next book comes out, it'll just be a matter of kind of making everybody aware, and I can sit back a little bit and hopefully let it take off, which would be wonderful.
Right. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us a little bit about you and your work. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I did as well. So I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you for joining me today for my interview with Kristin Bloch, author of Scatter Seeds of Kindness. To learn more about Kristin and her work, visit her website at KABlochAuthor.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.